Oh, Bobby, I got a question. Let's move on from Flair. And the next match, well, first off, they give another Miss Rock and Roll Express update, but we kind of already talked about that. But then after
Right.
that, they have George South, Rocky King, Italian Stallion versus Ivan, Nikita, and Crusher Khrushchev. It's about a 5 minute match where the Russians win. There's some ass kicking going on in here. But I've been wanting to ask you this, not necessarily for this match, but a long time. I've been saying this every time I get to a Rocky King match. Didn't you know Rocky King, or don't you know Rocky King?
Yes. And what a great
Okay.
guy. Great
Um.
guy.
So my question is, and I don't want to make this a race issue, but I'm going to ask. Rocky, to me, for an enhancement talent, he looked great. He seemed to be really good in the ring, unlike some enhancement talents. Now, none of these, George South, Rocky King, Italian talent here are all fine. But we've seen enhancement talents on Saturday night that aren't in this match that are just, God, did they just pull this motherfucker off the street and put him out there? Because this guy's pathetic. Rocky obviously was not that. He seemed like he was. I've seen him on Worldwide a few times work with Flair, and I mean, really good 6, 7, 8 minute match. Um, Rocky, do you have any clue or reason? And I said I don't want to make this a race thing because he's an African American man. Is there any reason why Rocky maybe wasn't utilized more or in a role that may have been more prominent than just enhancement talent? Because I don't know if he was a good promo or not, but he was really good in the ring and had a good look to me.
Well, I'll tell you and I'll try to keep it brief. First of all, the man is he's just a great guy, just a great dude, man. I was in Orlando. Once I signed my contract with WCW, we went out to this club not too far from Disney, and Rocky King's one of the first persons I ran into, and we just hit it off. Man, I shook his hand, I gave him a hug, and I said, man, and I said, Rocky, I said, I got to ask you. I said, I'm going to be straight up. And he knew who I was. I knew who he was, obviously. But Ricky Morton had told me a story before, and so this may answer your question a little bit as to why he may not have gotten a bigger push as enhancement talent or what have you. And that was the fact was when they divided up into the A team and the B team, because the Rock and Roll Express was on the B team, and they kept outdrawing the A team, okay, Dusty and that crew. And this is the shoot. Ricky told me a story.
I remember that. I've heard this story before.
3 years later, I run into Rocky, and then for 3 years I was at WCW. Rocky treated me great. He's a great dude. Like I said, can't say enough good about the guy. But the story was basically they went and they was in a meeting and they started dividing up. I guess Crockett starts dividing up. Here's who's going here, who's here is going here, and I guess Rocky grabs his bag and he said, "I'm done." And he says, and I guess it was Jim Crockett or whatever, and says, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Mr. Crockett," he goes, I drive the Rock and Roll Express around. I carried their luggage, and they pay me $100 each. He said, I make more money every night driving Ricky and Robert to the towns and taking their baggage in than what you paying me per night. He said, I'm losing money if I go up to the 18. I want to stay with Ricky and Robert. And he shook his head. He said, okay. And that was Ricky's story. And when I verified that the first night I ever met him in person, and I remember, and dude, he has some of the greatest fucking biceps. I never will forget that. It's like I said, at a club, just a club, and we're talking, and I said, man, Rocky, man, God, you still look great, blah blah blah. I have no answer other than maybe he was like, on A team he could have worked some higher level. I don't know if you go higher level than rock and roll, but he could have worked some guys in the first few matches and won a few matches. Then, of course, on a Saturday, it would put you over every once in a while,
Yeah.
So I don't have an exact answer other than I know that he was making, we'll say $100 is what I heard, to do the enhancement deal. But he was getting a couple hundred more by, them two sliding down in the back seat of a car and him driving out, taking them to a drop-off point, or leave your bags in the back and I'll have them at the town tomorrow, guys. Thank you very much. He was making more of that away. And Rocky just, in my book, Rocky is just over. And sadly enough, I can't give you an answer as to if it had anything to do with the color of his skin, being an African American man. But I would imagine at that time it probably did. Just the way our society was at that time. So it was like, well, hey, if you don't want to, move up or whatever, that's okay. We find someone else, and we'll just continue to beat you or whatever. And making the money at that time he was probably like, I'm the winner here. I'm the one making the money. So yeah, I think it's just a reflection of the times, and because he always had I don't know his promo. He spoke very politely and very righteously every time I spoke to him. I used to eat with him at catering. I see him at house shows and TV shows, and was always just a complete professional. And even when one of the funniest things, real quickly, in Orlando, he was part of the ring crew of Pez Watley, but not to give something away, but in Orlando one time that it was a 6-man, and it was the Armstrongs versus Brad. It was Brad Scott and Steve versus Dean Malenko, Eddie, and Chris, and Brad jumps up on the turnbuckle, and Rocky is learning to be a referee, and I'm sure he had more experience at that point. But anyway, at this one particular show, and Brad's like jumping up on the first rope, reaching out, going, hey, they're doing this, they're cheating or whatever, right? And Rocky turns around and says, there's like 10 people in the back. It's like one of those Sunday night shows. It's the last of the TV taping. You've been there 10 damn days. You're worn out. And Rocky King come back and told us, and we just started cracking up. But he turns around and he's telling Brad, who's on the first rope, trying to reach in for the tag, hey. And Rocky turns around and says, get down. But what he does, you're from that Universal Studio crowd down there and stuff. Brad just breaks into this little like bust a move type thing, and Rocky loses in the ring because he's trying to referee. When he says get down, Brad just starts like dancing, like getting down, and they come back in to have a great match. I mean, them guys could all 6 guys in there to work plus the referee. And then Rocky comes back and he said, man, that damn Brad, did you see that? And I'm like, well, I saw him getting down. I was like, what is going on? He said, I told him to get down, and he got down. The brother got down,
He started dancing.
And so to answer your question, at that particular time, obviously he had the body, he had the look. I don't know what his promos would have been like, but and obviously he's a good, good hand to have there. How come they didn't use him? I hate to say. Racial or biracial or bring anything into like that, because I don't know that. But man, the guy had a good look to him. He could work, and I imagine he could probably talk pretty good. He's been down there in South Carolina, and I'm sure in those house shows, and I think he lives in Atlanta now, but in those house shows and I'm non-TV, I'm sure they could have let him come out and talk, and he would have got over great. So
all the matches I've seen him in, even not just the complete squash matches, I've seen him on some wise. I mean, he was good. I mean, he knew what he was doing.
Oh yeah,
he looked the part. He like I said, he wasn't your typical. Some of the enhancement talent you see on some of these episodes. I'm serious, Bobby. I don't know if there's a few. I don't think they've like been through a day of bump training. I don't think they've actually ever just stood in the middle of a ring and took a friggin' flat back bump. They look like they have no clue. So Rocky obviously didn't fit that bill. Neither did George South Italian Stallion in this match. But I had been wanting to ask you about Rocky. So that was good. I'm glad
nothing but love and respect for that man. He's just a good dude. I think he's just a couple years older than me. And man, dude, he's just a great guy.
I hear you.
And I was around him for 3 years pretty consistently. And actually, one of the best things he told me was one time when I think I was on 2 Nitros, and the second one I was on, some things happened, and I was sitting there and I was behind the curtain, and it was just one of these things. Eric Bischoff went over.
I know what story you're gonna tell me.
So, but basically, he looked at me and he said, "Bobby, your check come this week?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Get out there He said, man, you ain't going to find a job like this. We were both making about the same amount of money, and he was still in the ring crew at this time. And he said, did your check come? And I said, yes, it did. He said, go do your job. He said,
Hashtag pin me,
nothing
pay
better. Pin me, exactly. That's it,
Pin
man.
me, pay me.
And I walked right back to where I had been standing at the front, at the gorilla position. I left that position. You know, I was like, fuck. I'm just ready to leave. Fuck this. And I walked back and I ran into Rocky. And dude, he said, Bobby, what's up? And I told him. He said that to me. I went right back up there. Paul Wardorf was standing there. Raph is who I was getting ready to wrestle, big Adam Bomb or whatever.
You told me this story.
Yeah, so yeah, that's what happened. So I went right back up there, stood there, and said, you know what? You're right. Pin me, pay me. Fuck. You can't get that kind of job where I live at. That check will be there. Turner checks don't bounce. So nothing but love and respect for him. Yeah, sure, I wish he, as a gentleman and as a competitor, but just I think a different time, different zone, time zone in history of society, etc. And for TV, that's just the way they happen to use a gentleman, you know.
I hear you.
But,
well, I'm glad you added that. I've been wanting to ask you that for a while. So